Hello YouTube, this is Sam from Tiger Schooling. In this session of the video, we're actually going to talk about the spermatic cord. So what is a spermatic cord? So spermatic cord is actually a collection of structures. For example, consider this as a spermatic cord, but few structures are remaining that I will be talking about. So remember, the spermatic cord is actually a collection of structures that pass through the inguinal canal. Like they can go towards the testis or coming out of the testis. All these structures that are crossing the inguinal canal and moving towards the testis or out of the testis. And remember this one. The spermatic cord always begins at the deep inguinal ring. We know that the inguinal ring has two openings, that is superficial inguinal ring and the deep. So the spermatic cord always begins at the deep inguinal ring. Let's talk about the structures of the deep inguinal canal. So we have the following structures that are in the deep inguinal canal. So the number one structure that I would call is your vas deferens, which are necessary for, we're going to talk about them in detail just a bit. But remember, the first structure is vas deferens. This is highlighted in green, is your vas deferens. And number second structure you have got is your testicular arteries. So your second structure would be your testicular arteries. All right, so your testicular arteries, so this one highlighted in brown is your testicular arteries. Number third structure would be your testicular veins, or you can call them the pempeniform plexus. What is pempeniform plexus? Let me explain first. Let me write it down. Pempeniform plexus. All right, so this is a kind of a mesh work of the different veins, like all the veins joining together, interconnecting with each other, forming a plexus like structure. So that's why we call these testicular veins as the pempeniform plexus. So that's the reason when the arteries and the pempeniform plexus like kind of cross each other, so kind of they share the temperature, and that's why the temperature of the, we will talking about the temperature management in the end, but that's why, because it's the because of the testicular artery and testicular vein, the temperature of the your scrotum is lower than or your testis is lower than your body temperature, or your abdomen, like the temperature that is in your body, normal body temperature, right? Now let's talk about the fourth structure, that is over the autonomic nervous system, and that one I showed here, autonomic nervous system, which is usually the main branch which crosses, is actually the genital branch of the genitofemoral nerve, and that one is the main branch. And number 5 is your remnants of your process vaginalis. So your remains of your processus vaginalis. Remember, what is processus vaginalis? We're going to talk about the processus vaginalis in just a bit, but remember, processus vaginalis is nothing, it's just a peritoneal fold, nothing else. That peritoneal fold kind of form a pouch, and that pouch kind of disconnects, and that pouch is actually your process vaginalis, nothing more than that, right? And now let's talk about go together. And there's another branch I've talked about. We have an artery, that is the autonomous nervous system, and we have another artery, or another nerve, that is a genitofemoral nerve, which I have talked about, which actually supplies your cremaster muscles. So number 6 is your what you call genital branch of the genitofemoral nerve. So genital branch of your genitofemoral nerve. All right, this guy supplies your cremaster muscle. Remember that cremaster muscle kind of helps you in contraction. We're going to talk about that one in just a bit. And now let's talk about something else. Now let's talk about these structures in a little bit, kind of give their description. So first, if we pick up the vas deferens, this is this structure. So I haven't mentioned the pempeniform plexus. This guy is pempeniform plexus, pempeniform plexus. All right, and these are the lymphatics. Remember, we also have lymphatics in this one. So there are mainly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 structures, mainly 7 structures. I haven't mentioned the lymph here, so we have the lymph as well. Now let's talk about a little bit about every structure. So what is vas deferens? So remember, the vas deferens is actually a thick walled, your vas deferens, this structure. So it's actually your thick walled, remember this one, is actually a thick walled muscular duct. This is a duct. Vas deferens is actually a duct, which is a thick-walled muscular, and that actually the function of is actually to transport the spermatozoa. If somebody is asking you what is the function of this guy, is to transport your spermatozoa from your epididymis. Remember, it's connecting to the epididymis. This is your epididymis, right? Epididymis. All right. And this is kind of connecting the epididymis to the is going to take your spermatozoa from your epididymis and going upward and going to end up in the urethra. So the vas deferens, very simple, it is a muscular duct kind of taking your spermatozoa from your epididymis towards your urethra. That's it. Now we could talk about, as we talk about the testicular arteries, remember this one. The testicular arteries, or you can say the genital arteries, actually are the branch of your abdominal aorta. They are the direct branch of the abdominal aorta. We have made a really extensive video, like there is 23-minute video on abdominal aorta, and that is really great, where you can find all the branches. There are 10 branches of the abdominal aorta. You must go and take a look at it. So remember, the testicular arteries are branches of your abdominal aorta, which arise at the level of 2 lumbar vertebra, and which supplies your testis and the abdominis muscle. Remember this one, right? Now let's talk about your testicular veins, or you can say the pampiniform plexus. This guy, the pampiniform plexus, kind of forming a mesh-like, you can say, extensive venous plexus. So remember this one. This pampiniform plexus, or your testicular vein, actually leaves from the posterior border of your testis, like not from the anterior side, not from the lateral side. It leaves from the posterior side. So as these veins kind of go upward, like in the initial phase, they have got much more branches. Remember this one. Let me show it to you. As we go above, this extensive venous plexus is actually going to reduce to one single testicular vein. Like we're going up, like different veins kind of merge together and going to form a one vein. Remember this one. As go above, they kind of, remember, as we go above, this extensive venous plexus is reduced to one single testicular vein, and this one single vein, you're gonna call it the testicular vein. Remember, which is at the level of your deep inguinal ring. Remember this one. At the level of deep inguinal ring, your all pampiniform plexus has been merged together to form a single vein, which we call the testicular vein. And this testicular vein is going, if you have the right testicular vein, it is going to drain into your inferior vena cava. Remember, the right testicular vein is going to drain into the inferior vena cava, but your left testicular vein is going to end up in your left renal vein. Remember this one. Left into left renal vein and right into your inferior vena cava. So that was about the testicular vein. Now let's talk about some other structures. For example, we have autonomic nervous system. So we know that the autonomic nervous system is actually a sympathetic fiber from renal to aorta. That's not a big deal. Leave it. Now let's talk about the lymph vessels. So the lymphatic system, or you can say the lymph of this testis, actually your spermatic cord, actually drains into the para-aortic lymph. I know it would be hard for you to understand the para-aortic lymph because it's just a direct name, but I'll make sure to make a detailed video on understanding para-aortic lymph, on all the lymphatic of the abdomen and your testis, to make a detailed video, and I'll make it connected, right? So now let's talk about this guy, which is called remains of process vaginalis. So I have told you that process vaginalis is actually a peritoneal diverticulum, like it's a pouch. When I use the word diverticulum, remember it's a pouch which has been detached from its structure. So the process vaginalis is just a peritoneal diverticulum which is formed when the testis or your ovary in female descend from the site of origin high on the posterior abdominal wall. Like your testis or your ovary are coming down from the high posterior wall of the abdomen, coming down, so they kind of detach your peritoneum, and that peritoneal detachment or your diverticulum is called the process vaginalis. Alright, now let's talk about the covering of your spermatic cord. Let's talk about your covering of your spermatic cord. Alright, so when I say the covering of the spermatic cord, remember that there are three remember there are three concentric, you can say concentric layers of fascia that are actually derived from different parts or different structures of your abdominal wall. So there are different three structures that are forming the covering. We cannot see the covering out here because I have to make other coverings, but these coverings can be shown here because they come down and cover up the testes. So I'll just name them here, but I'll explain these structures in detail in this diagram. And when we are going to talk about your scrotum, testis, and epididymis, I'm going to explain that in that structure. So now we have three structures. Remember, the first structure that is forming is covering is your external spermatic fascia. So your external spermatic fascia is forming the superior layer or the outer layer. So what is the function of your external spermatic fascia? It is actually derived from your external oblique muscle, or you can say the aponeurosis of external oblique muscle. The second structure, which is called cremasteric fascia, which is actually derived from your internal oblique muscle, the aponeurosis of internal oblique muscle. Third structure which is forming, I'll be naming this structure here, but remember we're going inside, we're going to coming outside to inside, right? So this is the most external one, this is the internal one, and the most internal one is the internal spermatic fascia. So internal spermatic fascia is the most internal one and is derived from, you remember that one, it is derived from your transversus abdominis muscle. All right, it is derived from the transversalis muscle. Okay, so these three structures actually form the layers of your spermatic cord. And in the next video, we're going to actually talk about the scrotum, your testis, and epididymis, and we're gonna use these few of these structures again and repeat them here, and we're going to talk about a little bit detail about them. So see you for the next video.